outlier thinking will get missed in an AI environment where it is this idea of like group thought and the most scale ends up being the right answer. And that oftentimes does not lead to the best idea or the best innovation, that's for sure, because we want outliers.
Try to fix the current system or reimagine something new. Will healthcare ever serve consumers just like me and you? The power's in our hands, but every side's gotta come together. We want the newer generations to get something better. Until we flip the script and talk about what gets prevented. Until we see the changes permanent as if we meant it. Until healthcare is finally consumer-centered. We've got a lot to rap about.
Welcome back to the leading podcast about consumer-centered health. This is more than a show, this is a mission, y'all. As builders and operators, we're here to share with you the latest consumer-centered ways that healthcare is being designed, marketed, and delivered. And as consumers yourselves, we want you to understand how these options work and why they might be right for you and your loved ones. Here's what's going down today. First up, we have the Flava of the week about Noom's new at-home biomarker testing. How can this latest move from correction to detection impact the quickly changing direct-to-consumer preventive space? And are we witnessing the digital front door and new patient consult transform right before our eyes? I'll talk about that. Then Kristy Roldan from MDRG joins me to talk about the newest ways that healthcare is happening outside of hospitals, why outlier thinking is important in consumer research, and how AI is and isn't helping us better understand consumers' health behaviors. I'm Jared Johnson. Let's get it.
Flava of the week.
Noom is shifting its entry point from correction to detection with its latest launch. On May 27th, they announced the launch of their at-home biomarkers test kit, making it simple for members to see exactly how their GLP-1s and healthy habits are transforming their health. The kit enables members to identify risk factors before disease develops, starting by establishing their baseline labs and tracking improvements in markers like HbA1c and triglycerides. Members can now collect a small blood sample at home in under 10 minutes, skip the lab visit, and receive clinically meaningful results within about a week, paired directly with access to medication and behavior change programs to improve those results. According to Fit Insider, Noom analyzed recent blood draw data from its microdosed GLP-1 longevity program and found the majority of its healthy users were also above baseline. 70% had elevated LDL cholesterol, while over a third were at risk for prediabetes despite a normal BMI. Noom will now plug frictionless blood work into an ecosystem of wearables, integrated AI coaching, drug catalysts, and pharmacy fulfillment, providing motivation and encouraging medication adherence with outcomes that they can see. Close quote. What's the consumer lens? In the very near future, biomarker testing will be a standard offering for every player in the preventive health space. Incumbents and new players alike will go from one-dimensional offerings to being part of the new standardized offering set that includes biomarker data, wearable data, behavioral context, health coaching, and AI interpretation. Soon it will be so commonplace it won't even make headlines. This will be the new digital front door and new patient consult, but we're not there yet. From what I've seen and studied, a majority of even health-conscious consumers aren't aware of the breadth and depth of at-home testing and diagnostics that are available now, let alone what's coming in the next few months and years. I still see entire demographic and psychographic segments just being used to waiting for their doctor to prescribe something or checking if insurance covers it first. So it'll take some time before the majority feels comfortable with so much data in their hands, but believe me, there are remarkable options now, and the pricing's coming down quickly. Just look at Noom's price tag of $125 for what used to cost hundreds or even thousands more. Let's not ignore the quickly changing direct-to-consumer preventive health offerings like Noom's at-home biomarker testing and acknowledge the part that they play in how consumers choose to engage in their health. That's another way that we'll build the healthcare of tomorrow, and that's the Flava of the week. All right, everyone, let's get into the flow. I'm here with Kristy Roldan, VP of Growth at MDRG, friend of the program, someone we've been valuing their insights for years on the show, and thrilled to have her here. Kristy, welcome to the Healthcare Wrap.
Thank you so much for having me. Love it. So nice. You're saying nice things about me today. It feels awesome.
Well, they're well-deserved, and we were just talking about how we were basically ships in the night at HMPS. We may have seen each other in the halls, and I attended one of your sessions there. But we have a new intro question that we've been asking our guests recently, which is just a good way to kind of give our listeners and our viewers a context of where you're coming from on things. For those who aren't as familiar with MDRG or yourself, We've just been asking if you had to boil down your philosophy about healthcare into like a core belief, maybe one or two core beliefs, what would that be? Like,
Such a good question. I would say for like my specific purview and the industry that I serve, I think that my kind of like boilerplate on this is that the consumer needs to be included in the conversation. That would be my headline in all things. But also, I think that more and more as a category, we're noticing that healthcare is all things kind of in all places. Healthcare doesn't just happen in hospitals anymore. Healthcare happens more and more at home and sometimes online and sometimes in schools and sometimes, when through our watch, when we're out taking a walk. So, healthcare happening within the confines of certain walls, I find to be non-existent anymore and not the way that we should be thinking about it, certainly.
I think that helps us just connect a lot of conversations that happen in the industry because they tend to be focused either inside those settings, inside a traditional provider setting, or completely outside of it so much that they're ignoring the fact that, like, for just about everybody, it's still really beneficial to have a relationship with a healthcare team, with the provider, but then we're also looking at all these other ways to engage. So being able to be aware that like it's not just one or the other. We're talking about both. Like it's bringing those conversations together. Those things do tend to happen a lot more when we're focused on the consumers being served. But okay, yeah, I'll set the stage here a little bit. So at HMPS, you had a session there, and maybe you can recap the session a little bit, run through some key points, because then I want to dig into how the audience reacted to it, which I thought was really kind of cool.
Yeah, it was really, really nice. Before I get into it, we had a lot of audience participation, which was lovely because we were featured on the last day of the conference. Kind of, you're seeing people kind of like leave for the airport. So to have not only have decent attendance, but also having people kind of giving feedback and really engaged and asking questions really made it so much more fun. So our conference presentation was about AI moderation and a ton of topics at HMPS about AI, but we wanted to drill more deeply into how we're using AI in market research and kind of talk not only about how, MDRG is partnering with auctioneers specifically in this example to, understand consumers using AI to moderate interviews, but also just kind of the things that we should be thinking about the right applications for AI in research and kind of the wrong ones too. So really wanted to lay out the places where we feel really comfortable playing with AI in a research lens and the places where we're still pretty reliant and wanting to stay reliant on humans. So that was kind of the overarching theme of the conference. But with AI moderation specifically, what we're hearing from a lot of our clients is that they have trackers or they have ongoing, patient experience surveys that are doing a really good job of, kind of the blocking and tackling, the foundational research that needs to be happening all of the time. But sometimes what gets missed is deeper level conversations that allow for some emotion that typically would come in the form of an interview or a focus group. The only issue with that is, well, two issues really, is that one, qualitative research, the type of research that I'm talking about, is typically a lot more expensive than running a survey. So sometimes cost prohibitive, but also that it's more time consuming. You have to find somebody to be willing to get on the phone and do an interview. You have to find a time that works with their calendar and your calendar. And then typically if we're getting somebody on the phone, you're asking for about an hour of their time. And then worse so in a focus group, because now you're asking that person to get in their car, drive to a location, sit with a number of people, have a conversation, get back in their car and drive home. So there's some elements to that add some complexity that AI has taken out. Also, just that we're human beings. So the maximum amount that we could probably interview or focus group people in a day is pretty limited. But when you introduce this idea of AI, now all of a sudden you can add scale to this. So the example that we gave with Ochsner during HMPS, we did 10 interviews with human beings, and then we did 50 interviews using the AI moderator. And that just wouldn't be able to happen in the type of time frame that we were talking about with a human being.
I recall the audience has some questions about like virtual audiences,
Mm-hmm.
even and AI portraying humans, if I
Mm-hmm.
remember right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a really interesting topic and one that we are continuing to look at and vet at MDRG. I think that there's instances where virtual audiences are going to begin to really play a role in. And then I think that there's others that we feel less comfortable about today. And the example that was given was this idea of, well, I don't like um, the idea of a virtual audience or, a virtual persona answering an open ended question as if they are a human being, which I think is totally fair to a degree. Like, as a human being is the part that I disagree with. No virtual audience should pretend to be a human being. But I do like the idea of a virtual kind of avatar taking existing data and doing some predictive analysis on the way that people might behave. I think that you need to put some caveats around that for sure. I think you need to be saying things like, this is a virtual answer based on blank, blank, blank source, and really spelling that out and being able to go back to those sources and check that data. But I also think, and I lean on the idea of like, we create personas using data, and these personas aren't real people all the time. That's a part of like what we do. We do segmentation. We make, data-driven clusters that end up being segments. But then what we do is we say, well, who is the made-up person that would represent whatever, the 45 to 50 caregiver? We'll call her Nancy. And Nancy lives in Scottsdale. Like, it's all made up, but we're just trying to bring color and life into an idea. So in that kind of instance, I'm really okay with a virtual kind of avatar taking that role because we were making it up to begin with. But anything, going back to that question, anything that is meant to be representing a human, don't prescribe to that idea.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to separate the two. And it's very nuanced, but very important because that makes perfect sense, especially with the creation of personas, of how we've used those for a long time.
Yeah.
Anyway, another question I recall the audience had was about using a service line approach versus an enterprise approach. We're talking about like when we're doing AI based
Mhm.
studies at all. Can you recall that conversation?
Yeah, they were asking Ochsner specifically when we've done AI moderated studies, what was the use case? With Ochsner specifically, it has been at an enterprise level and um, at at a regional level. So wanting to understand kind of if you remember, it was doing research on research. So we had done a similar test in 2021 and we redid it last year in 25, and we wanted to see if things had changed. And so it it wasn't specific to a service line, although there were service line level questions that we put into the discussion guide that the AI moderator used. So for anybody else that's considering this, think think there are use cases at a service line level. I think there are use cases at an enterprise level. We can certainly talk about use cases that I wouldn't recommend, but I don't think that that is a way that I would divide using an AI moderator, service line versus enterprise. I think that there's good use cases for both.
Got it. Okay. Yes. Thanks. That helps a lot on that one. Yeah, it was an interesting session. I think the other piece that kind of came up, maybe it was towards the end, was about AI homogenization in
Yes.
research. You just refresh people on kind of like what's that concept, and is it something we should be concerned about?
Yeah, I think the idea, and there was two parts, and the question was around the idea of if it's the same people inputting data into AI, or AI is using the same studies to analyze, then doesn't the research all end up kind of looking the same? And then there was a follow-up question about creative? And does, because AI only, it has a certain set of inputs at this point, and what we're asking AI to create, will creative ultimately start looking the same? Will we get the same outputs when we're hopefully adding different inputs? And in both cases, I do think that there is risk of that to some degree. I think that there is risk if a health system, or if anybody is relying on the same set of data and asking it to do new things. That information set is finite. So unless we
Right.
are using information sources that are continuously updated, then I think that we can expect some homogenization. And I think that that's a little bit tricky, because certainly we want to keep our own data and our own data lakes kind of siloed and not shared and not used to train AIs. But then what does and what will ends up being the question. And so we've looked at a lot of different platforms and a lot of different partners when we've considered AI partners. And I really try and go for solutions that I feel are really considerate about where data is coming from, the quality of the data, but how frequently is it being updated? What's going into this? Because that is a worry. This idea of homogenization, I do think it is a worry, and potentially rightfully so if you're not being thoughtful about that.
I agree, and I think it speaks a lot to you mentioned, like, the sources, like, where the data is coming from, right? We have come a long way from I'm laughing because I remember, like, one of the very few focus group experiences I actually had as a participant, was when I look back, it was actually for Blockbuster Video, and
Oh,
it was right at the time, not even joking, like, the topic was, "Should we move forward with our home delivery DVD subscription program?" Like, it was right when Netflix and Redbox were, like, coming out, and I just remember thinking, it almost didn't matter even at the time, like, I don't know if it matters what I say here. Like, I'm pretty sure they already have an idea of, like, where they wanna go with things, and, like, we didn't know at the time, where they were going to go or, like, where they're gonna disappear. I just remember feeling like by the end of it, I was like, I'm tired. I don't even want to share too much more. I think I've shared what I want. So like I kind of backed down, a little bit. Like I didn't share as much. And I'm like, there's a lot of group think and just, those kinds of principles in focus groups. And from what I'm hearing and seeing, we're able to set up research in a completely different way. I know it's probably clear compared to that type of example, but
yeah.
it's coming really far really quickly, I guess.
Really far, really quickly. But going back, I just want to add another point on that idea of homogenization before I talk about breadth. But the other thing, and I know we've talked about this internally at MDRG, that I worry about is exactly, you just rung it up with that Blockbuster example, is outlier thinking will get missed in an AI environment where it is this idea of like group thought, and the most scale ends up being the right answer. And that oftentimes does not lead to the best idea or the best innovation, that's for sure, because we want outliers. We want people that are like, no, this isn't working for me. And, because somebody that isn't articulating a problem doesn't mean they're not having the problem. So we need people that are willing to kind of step outside of groupthink and say, listen, this is not my experience, or this is my experience and it's great, but we need these outliers to be a part of the conversation. And I think that that's where humans need to continue to play a role in all of this, for sure. I mean, there's other examples of that, but definitely hearing these outliers, the AI certainly will not capture because it doesn't represent kind of the mass, is an important thing to take note of. I would say too, now moving to the idea of having solutions with breadth, we've evaluated a couple companies that are using things like census data and polling data, and trying to think of other examples. They were using also big data sets from like syndicated data. I'm thinking of like the
Mm,
Foresters and the Gartners of the world that are collecting
yeah.
just volume and scale. Those are the types of instances and sources that I think that we should be looking to when we're thinking about kind of applications for AI that are not qualitative, that would be quantitative. Because again, those things, census to a lesser degree, but those types of applications that are comparing huge groups of people are good sources of information and
Yeah.
trusted sources of information, more importantly.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's important to just like not assume. I mean, I do think the one good kind of thing that's coming out of where AI is in a lot of parts of our industry right now is people are asking more often. I feel like they want to trust, but like it's the trust and verify, trust but verify. I think more people are like, I really do need to know where this is coming from. Like, I need to understand that. I just hope we are getting more comfortable saying, I can't take this at face value. Like, I need to understand a little bit more where it's coming from. And I do think that's important for us to understand where any data takes us. And to that end, as I start to kind of put all these thoughts together, I wonder kind of like where this gets us, right? Like, how do we use some of these new methods and new insights that that MDRG is learning, and others are learning out there about how to do research, what to do with it, how to assemble this and put it together. How is that teaching us more about consumers? How do we find what are the most relevant insights? How do we keep learning about them? How do we get to know consumers better because of all this?
Yeah, I think that, the headline here is humans have to continue to be a part of it. I think that there's tons of applications for AI to help us be more efficient. I guess like AI is good at analysis and providing the answer, but the upfront strategy and understanding what your goals are and what your objectives are equally as important, right? Like there's a lot of conversation about like, well, if I ask AI a question, the same kind of question, but using different words, three different ways, I'll get three different answers. And so
Yeah.
you kind of have to have a really good set of objectives going in. What do I want to learn about this? And then again, to your point, you have to be able to go back and check AI sources. We've had some instances of that recently where we posted an article where sources were written and went back to the publisher and said, we clicked on your links and we didn't find the percentages that you're listing in this article that we reposted. Turns out it was written by AI and the publisher ended up needing to take the article down. So being able to fact check kind of what we're saying is really important. And again, the strategy and the objectives behind it and being able to check it is equally as important as doing the work. So AI is really good at doing the work, but you have to be really good about the strategy and the why behind it. And I think that certainly more I'm painting in broad brushstrokes, but in our business too, I would say that humans are much better equipped today to handle and understand emotion and emotional conversations and body language and being able to kind of read context clues. And AI is not really ready for that right now. Not saying it won't ever be, but right now, anything to me that, if we're getting an ask from a client that is reading emotional, I would say like our AI tools immediately come off the table. And so now I'm like, okay, what kind of human interaction are we going to prescribe for this event? So that kind of, having those like, yes, it works for this and no, it doesn't for that kind of really helps us determine the best course of action.
Yeah, thanks for making that distinction. I think that's super important for us. We just need to be thinking about this stuff as we go forward. Chrissy, you've really opened up a lot here, and I kind of want to wrap up here in our last minute by just asking you, kind of open ended, like what's your advice to fellow leaders in this space as they're just navigating the same things that you're navigating between? I didn't know that we could be as busy as we were
Right.
during post pandemic, but it feels like we are even more so. So what's just your general advice to leaders in the space who are just trying to figure out day to day how to be successful, how to move where they want to go, and whether that's in their career or, with client work or or projects or things. What are things that help you as you're looking to be a leader in the space?
I really try to lead with curiosity, and maybe that's because I'm in the market research space, that does make sense. But I think that we work with humans and healthcare deals in humans, and we're complicated people, and we don't always do what we say, and we don't always say what we mean. And so leading with curiosity and really getting to the root of, different decisions that people are making is critically important to kind of, moving forward in the right way and being more thoughtful as a leader, as a coworker, but also, in my business, we say we bring forward the voice of consumers, and I want to make sure that we're continuing to do that the right way. And I think that being curious kind of gets us there.
Fantastic. Kristy, thanks for the conversation today. And yes, we're going to keep humans at the center of everything we do and be in a better place because of it. But thanks for giving us so much to think about. Thanks for everything you're doing to bring that consumer voice out there to the center of everything that we do in healthcare. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.